welcome you to tonight's Citizens Climate University. It's a weekly webinar program of Citizens Climate Lobbies that provides CCL supporters like you and I with access to in-depth training opportunities on topics relating to climate change and effective climate advocacy. I'm your host, Brett Cease, and tonight's specific topic is on how to publish climate-focused op-eds or opinion editorials successfully. Thank you so much for joining us. And as we put in the billing, are you curious about how to improve your writing skills for climate-focused opinion editorials? Join Steve Valk, CCL's communications coordinator, tonight for a specific training to answer those questions. We're going to cover the process for writing a new op-ed, how to successfully submit it, as well as the editorial process. A little bit more about Steve. Steve Valk, before joining Citizens Climate Lobby in 2009 as one of our longest tenured staff, had a career spanning 30 years with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, serving as the media consultant as well for citizen-driven anti-global poverty organization Results. At CCL, Steve trains and supports volunteers as they publish letters, articles, and op-eds in local newspapers and develop relationships with their members of Congress. And if we've done our job well, our three main learning goals tonight are the following. Having you walk away with an understanding of the writing process, as well as some specific tips for drafting your own climate-focused op-eds, some recommendations for how to submit them, as well as sharing them when they're published with the rest of your chapter and your members of Congress. And then we're going to have a chance to provide some effective examples for what those look like with prior letters and op-eds that have been submitted. So with that, we hope you enjoy tonight's training. I'll put a link where you can find the slides again. And I'll pass it to Steve to take it from here.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Brett, and welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to tonight's training. And so looking at our agenda here, what we'll do is we'll go over the writing process and then talk a little bit about how to submit your op-ed. And what do you do after it gets published? Well, you share your success, and then we'll look at a few examples and ideas of some things, some op-eds that have been published before, and then we'll go to a Q&A for folks who have questions. So, so the first thing that the question that we kind of want to answer for ourselves is, do we want to do a template or do we want to do a unique piece? And so when we're talking about a template, for those of you who are not familiar with it, the communications department provides probably about every 2 months or so, we will have an op-ed from Mark Reynolds, usually from Mark Reynolds or somebody else on CCL's staff. And it'll be a piece that'll be pretty much fully written, but there'll be some places in that op-ed where you can insert the local angle, like what's the impact of climate change in your community, or has your member of Congress co-sponsored the Energy Innovation Act, or the call to action to have your congressmen and your senators support the legislation and so forth. And so then once you've filled in that local information, then you just add your name to Mark's name or the staffer's name, and you'd submit it to the newspaper. And so it makes for a very easy process for getting an op-ed submitted to your local newspaper. So so I believe we're putting the link in the chat. I see Brett nodding his head there. So so the link is there to go to CCL Community, where you will find the op-ed templates. And we're coming up on Earth Day, and we're going to have not one, not two, but we're going to have 3 different op-eds relating to Earth Day that'll be available for people as templates that they can use. One will be focused on the business argument for pricing carbon. The other will be looking at it from a faith perspective, and then there'll be another one that looks at the climate impact that's happening all around the nation right now over the last year, and it was just a really devastating last year for climate change. So that's the template. Just wanted to kind of go over that real quick, and if you have more questions about that, we can look at that later on in the Q&A. So let's go to the writing process. If you're writing a piece from scratch, how do you go about doing that? So let's take a look at the topic and approach to doing this, and essentially what you will write about and how you will write about it. That's what we're talking about here with the topic and approach. So op-eds must relate to something that's in the news or something that should be in the news. And the topic can relate to a recent report, a disaster that's connected to climate change, could be an annual event like the State of the Union address or Earth Day or something like that. So the approach can take several forms. Once you've decided what you're going to write about, you could do like a straightforward presentation of facts. You can write a piece that's a personal story, or you can write a first-person narrative. So once you've made all of these decisions about what you're going to write about and how you're going to approach it, the first step that you want to take is to create an outline. So the outline should probably be about maybe 6 or 7 items that takes you from your opening to your conclusion. And the nice thing about an outline is that as you're writing your piece, you might get stuck. You can go back to the outline and see, oh, what's next here? Oh, this is the next thing that I wanted to write about. It's in your outline. So your outline also becomes kind of like a shopping list for the research that you'll need to do for your piece. So you'll want to do the research before you start writing. So once you've figured out your topic, read as many articles about it as you can until the information is almost coming out of your pores. So this will make the writing process much easier. The words will just spill out of your head because nothing stymies the writing process like having to stop and look for information to back up the case that you're trying to make. And so, and it lends more credibility to your piece if you can cite the sources that you have for your facts. So you've got your outline, you're going to start writing. You want to be compelling right from the start. You have, 1, maybe 2 sentences to grab the reader's attention. So you want to say something that's provocative, engaging, and informative right at the very beginning. In other words, you want to say something that will make the reader say, okay, you have my attention, tell me more. So don't mess around, with, backing into your piece with historical background or something like that. The reader needs to immediately know what is your point, or they'll just move on to the next article. So after you've had your brilliant, compelling opening for your piece, you'll want to create a natural flow. And a good way to do this is to anticipate questions that readers might have and then answer them. So often those questions will raise more questions that you should answer. So in anticipating and answering the questions, you're going to create a natural and logical flow to your piece. Sometimes I'll even pose the question in the piece, say something like, how can we tax carbon without it being an economic burden on American families? And then, of course, the answer to that is you give the money back to people. So that's a good way to kind of create a natural flow for your pieces, to anticipate the questions that the reader's going to have and then answer those questions. So as you're writing, you'll definitely want to pay attention to the local angle. So your local newspaper, they don't care about the fate of polar bears in the Arctic, but if you can relate climate change to what's happening in your state and community, the editors are more likely to publish your piece. So you want to talk about things like, what is the impact that climate change is having in your area? And what will it be like in the future? And so you can also talk about the opportunities that you might have in your area as we transition to cleaner energy and greater energy efficiency. So another thing that you'll want to pay attention to as you're writing your piece is to stay focused. Um, there's going to be this temptation that if you've ever written a letter to the editor and you only had 150 words, all of a sudden now you've got 700 words, and so there's like, oh my goodness, I'm going to say everything I ever wanted to say about climate change and how to solve it. Don't do that. Save some for the next piece. So you want to stay focused. Just to, if you can get just one or two main points across, and then kind of back up what those main points are, you're doing your job. And you definitely want somewhere in your piece to have a strong call to action. So when you publish an op-ed, you basically have the biggest megaphone in your community. Any decent sized newspaper uh, in a city is probably going to have like about 100,000 readers at least. And so you've got this platform. Use it to issue a call to action, like telling people to contact your members of Congress, or even directly calling on your congressmen and your senators to support the legislation that we want to see passed. In conclusion, you want to finish strong. Nothing is it kind of takes the wind out of your sails than a piece that just kind of trails off, and the reader is going to remember the last thing that they read, and so that's a good reason to have a strong finish at the end. So what you'll want to do then, if that's what the reader is going to remember, make sure that you repeat the main point of your op-ed. A good technique is to circle back to the beginning of the piece. What was the thing that kind of got this conversation started in the first place, and relate back to that. And this would also be a good place to kind of use a clever phrase or something at the end. So this is where you can be a little cute, with some wordplay or something like that, to put a little smile on the reader's face or something. So how do you know if you've got a good piece, if you've got something that makes sense? And so the litmus test that I always like to apply to an op-ed is, can you write a headline for it? So the true test of the quality of an op-ed is the ease with which you can write a headline for it. If you can't sum up what you're trying to say in 8 words, there's a problem there. You might want to consider a rewrite. And when you submit your op-ed, include the suggested headline, because more often than not, the newspaper, they're pretty busy. If somebody writes a headline for them and they say, looks good to me, they'll run with it. they'll use that headline. And this also reduces the risk of a bad headline being written. We've seen bad headlines on stories, and nothing kind of messes things up than a bad headline, because that's the first entry point to your piece, and you don't want the introduction, as it were, to be botched. Yeah, look at the headline as the introduction to the piece that you've written. So here we have a few examples of headlines that appeared on op-eds that have run in the past. on for Citizens Climate Lobby. And like I say, if you can't write a headline for it, something needs to change. So let's talk about submitting your op-ed to the newspaper. It shouldn't be all that mysterious. A lot of newspapers will have instructions on their opinion page, both on the print page and also online. They'll have instructions if you want to submit an op-ed to the newspaper. But before you do that, we've reached the point with CCL where we actually have several groups in the circulation of area of some of our bigger newspapers. So to avoid, number one, duplicating effort, and number two, the newspaper getting several op-eds from the same organization on the same topic, we recommend going to your group leader and having your group leader check with the other chapters in your area to make sure somebody else isn't writing and submitting an op-ed as well. So once you've cleared that, again, you can look up the instructions on the newspaper, either on the print page or the website. And if they don't have instructions for submitting an op-ed, what you'll want to do is to send it to the opinion page editor. And usually on the newspaper's website, there at the bottom of their homepage, there is a link, a contact us link. If you click that and you go to that page, there's usually another link that will go to the newsroom staff directory. And then once you get there, you should be able to find the editorial page editor or the opinion page editor there, and they'll have their email address. So once you know how you're going to send it in, who you're sending it to, and everything, I would recommend that you do not send it as an attachment. People get a little skittish about emails from people that they don't know that have attachments on them. So don't send it as an attachment. Copy and paste your op-ed into the body of an email. And at the very top, just write a short note, two or three sentences, introducing yourself. Hi, my name is Steve Valk. I'm a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby. And then just one or two short sentences about why the newspaper should consider publishing the op-ed that you're sending to them. And then and just please consider publishing this op-ed because this and this. So that's the submission process. It's fairly simple. Again, check to make sure there's not some other group in your area that's duplicating your effort. So then, okay, you've gotten your op-ed published. What do you do now? So first thing you can do is to send a little note to the opinion editor, thanking them for running your piece. Hey, it looks great. I love the headline that I wrote. But anyway, yeah, a little thank you note goes a long way. And then you'll want to share it with the group leader in your chapter, because they'll want to celebrate your success with the rest of your group. So go ahead and share it with your group leader, and go ahead and log it into the action tracker on CCL Community. And if everybody here is probably on CCL Community, it's probably how you found out about tonight's training. But the action tracker is usually on everybody's. There's a link to it on everybody's homepage when you log into CCL Community, and it's pretty easy and straightforward. So do log. Submit a report on the action tracker. We do want to know about all these wonderful things that people are doing out there, particularly when it comes to media with the op-eds and editorials and letters to the editor. So after you've logged in your op-ed on the action tracker, social media is a great way to share your op-ed, to basically leverage the success that you had with the print media. and you can share it on your Facebook page. I really recommend sharing it on Twitter. And if you're not on Twitter, get on Twitter just for that purpose. So that you can share your op-ed with people. And in particular, what you'll want to do is, if you're on Twitter, you post a tweet. Hey, I wrote this great op-ed about carbon pricing and how we can solve climate change, and then you have a link to that op-ed. Now, the only caveat to that, and this is increasingly so, is that a lot of times newspapers require a subscription to read their content. So, but there's a workaround for that. If you have a print version of your op-ed, take a picture of it, and then add that, attach that photo to your tweet if you can't actually link to the op-ed. So you want to share that op-ed on Twitter, and when you do that, make sure that you tag both your House member and your senators. They're all on Twitter. They all have staffers who monitor their bosses' social media feeds. So if you put that on there and you tag your members of Congress, there's a good chance that a staffer in that office is going to see that. And if you get some people in your chapter to retweet that op-ed so that it shows up in their mentions, several times, they're going to take note of that. They're going to see, oh, not only did this person write an op-ed, which my boss has mentioned, there's also a bunch of people who read that and are calling our attention to it too. So it kind of it improves the chances that that the congressperson's staffer is going to bring that piece to the attention of the senator or the representative. So do share this stuff on social media, and you'll also want to share it with the congressional liaisons, both your Senate liaisons and your House member liaison, because what those liaisons do is they're in communication with those congressional offices, and one of the things that they love to do with the contacts in those congressional offices is to forward letters to the editor, op-eds, editorials about our issues. So make sure that the liaison in your chapter knows about your op-ed so that they can send that to the congressional office that they work with. So let's talk about some ideas and examples. Here's a little technique that I call the extended metaphor. So a metaphor is, it's a figure of speech containing an implied comparison in which a word or phrase ordinarily used for one thing is applied to something else. And so as the name extended metaphor might imply, this kind of takes that device and sort of runs with it throughout the piece. I wrote a piece a number of years back called Last Call at Club Fossil Fuel. And on the next slide here, we have an excerpt from that. Never heard of Club Fossil Fuel? It's the most popular franchise on the planet, everyone's favorite watering hole for well over a century, because the addictive libations, coal, oil, and gas, are relatively cheap. Cheap, that is, until you factor in the hidden costs, like asthma and other respiratory diseases from air pollution, or the military costs to secure our supplies of oil. So that metaphor was kind of carried throughout the piece there. So that's one technique. Another technique is the personal story or narrative. Nothing really beats a personal story when it comes to connecting with readers. And so recently we had some CCL volunteers who shared personal stories in op-eds about the impact of Arctic temperatures that were caused by the polar vortex that dipped down all the way to the Gulf of Mexico in Texas. And so the excerpt that we have here, the headline on this piece was "When Texas Freezes Over." Not when hell freezes over, when Texas freezes over. Arctic conditions across the southern US show climate changes here. And so Jenna Hammerich, in a piece that she wrote in the Iowa City Press Citizen, said, "Here in Iowa, the deep freeze was especially hard for livestock. On our farm, we had to feed our llamas high energy food to ensure that they made it through the night. Every morning, we'd wake up and run to the barn to make sure that they were okay. Then our water hydrant broke. So we carried buckets of water from the house to the barn in dangerously cold temperatures." And so there you have it. It's just this little snippet of a story, but it pulls the reader in. It kind of sets the scene for what happened there, and it kind of makes it real for people. So the next technique would be the local angle. So the more that you can connect the issue to how it affects your city and state, the more relevant it's going to be for readers. So we had a volunteer in California who wrote about the impact that climate change is having on state parks. So in this excerpt here, the headline on the piece was "Climate Change's Negative Impact on State Parks." Um, the warming ocean and air temperatures, concurrent with the carbon dioxide emissions skyrocketing since the Industrial Revolution, have dire consequences on our more than 280 California state parks. A rising sea level and an expected increase in shoreline erosion will shrink popular California state park beaches and threaten many facilities. So again, a great example of how is climate change affecting your community, because that's the thing that people are most interested in. And so then another approach that you can take with an op-ed is annual events. There are things that happen every year on the calendar. You've got Christmas, you've got New Year's, you've got a State of the World. I mean, not State, State of the Union report, Earth Day. All these things happen every year, and you can, which gives you lots of lead time to think about, something that you might want to write that's timely at that point in the year. So like if you were going to use the New Year's hook, you can talk about your New Year's what's my New Year's resolution? Well, I want to save the world from climate change. That's my New Year's resolution. Christmas. What would you give your children for Christmas? Well, how about a livable world in this century? So the example that we have actually kind of looks at Earth Day, and this was a piece from Mark Reynolds that ran in the Northern Kentucky Tribune in 2019. Headline here is "Earth Day's Movement for Healthy Environment Continues with Call to Action on Climate." And so here's the opening for the piece. As Americans observe Earth Day, let's take a moment to reflect on the power of the grassroots movement behind that first celebration in 1970, which led to dramatic changes that improved the quality of our lives through cleaner air and water. Today, a similar movement is building for Congress to enact measures to preserve a livable climate for future generations. So, like I say, a nice, and actually April is probably our biggest month for op-eds because of Earth Day. So that's coming up. It's a great opportunity, and as I said earlier, we're going to be offering 3 different topics connecting to Earth Day, and they'll probably be out at the beginning of April. So you'll have plenty of time to download those and doctor them up a little bit and send them into your newspaper.
Bravo, Steve. I think even before transitioning, just thank you so much for such a succinct half hour of information and recommendations here from a career in journalism. That was so focused and helpful, and I know we're all just really benefiting from your advice here. So I think that's a perfect way to close it. What I put here on the slide here again is what Steve's referencing, a wonderful place outside of tonight to get that support and send people that have questions or would like to workshop anything that they're working on is on CCL Community, a link to our forums. Steve has screenshot a link here to the specific one that we have under our site-wide forums for media relations, where you can stay current and subscribe to any of the ongoing training invites that Steve and Flannery are putting out, any questions that you might have. You're more than welcome to post there, as well as the print media action team. And Steve's email is listed here as well as in the chat. It's simply steve@citizensclimate.org. I can speak from personal experience. He's always happy to help workshop pieces and be available for you to ongoing strategize. And I'll pass it to you, Steve, to close us out here.
One quick thing I wanted to mention, in case you're not familiar with it, we have a position within chapters that we call the media manager. And so people who are the media managers get on our a mailing list from the communications team. So we'll send, probably like about 2 emails a month or something like that with, media opportunities that we have coming up, whether it's an editorial packet or a new op-ed template or, things that people can be writing letters to the editor about. So if you want to be and you can have more than one media manager in a group. So if you want to be on that list for media managers, send me an email and I'll get you on there.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Hopefully.
Can't wait to read them in the print edition.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.